welcome to the More Than Lipstick podcast. When I am delighted to have you. I have been following you and the great work that you have been doing with your company and your vision. And I think that right now, more than ever, is a very appropriate time for us to have this conversation about not only building your own, not only sitting at the table, but truly building and bringing your own table in light of all the statistics that have been out here, and not only statistics, but people that represent those statistics are experiencing. And those statistics are as of July of 2025, and these numbers go back and forth 319,000 Black and African American women have been laid off in the workforce.
Oh.
And that is a very powerful number. And we're only talking about in 2025. And I experienced that liberation moment back in 2024. So
Mhm.
these are not even aggregated numbers that we are
Right.
seeing. This is just a snapshot in a moment in time.
Mhm.
So with that being said, before I go any further, I would really love for you to introduce yourself to the audience, tell them a little bit about you, and then I want to start talking about what the hey is going on and what's next.
I know, right? Sure. So thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast. I remember a few years ago when you sent me an email and you said, I am starting a podcast. And I was so incredibly happy and over the moon for you. And just to see it come to fruition and to be sitting here with you is really a full circle moment for me. So again, thank you for the invitation. For those that do not know me, my name is Quin Brewington, and I am the creator of the Second Act Summit, More Life in Midlife, which is my community on school. And I just launched a YouTube channel called Encore Earners this past August, a year ago when I got serious about it. But my main mission right now is really being a midlife mentor to women like me, women who have been in the workplace and they have come to either a professional or a personal crossroads and they want to do something different. And so all of these communities and all of these spaces that I've created over the last 5+ years is really giving people options, giving people a landing place, because we're all at different stages in this midlife journey. And so my ability to create these spaces where people can come and create in a safe space and not have to worry about, is this the right thing? Am I doing something wrong? These are spaces where they're able to come, test their ideas, get resources, get tools, get coaching. And so this has been really my mission for the last few years.
I love it. I love it. I remember when you made your first announcement 5 years ago, and to see the growth that you have experienced and the resources that you have been able to provide to the community has just been phenomenal. And girl, I knew that you were like there when you started getting those sponsorships. That I was just like, yes, that's my girl. She is doing the thing. So I am just thrilled for you. And thank you so much for sharing. And I, I think a big part of this is so timely. Like, I started my podcast back in the pandemic because I was bored and at home with a 3-year-old, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do if my employer did not call me back to work. Right.
Mm.
And during that time was also around the time that I think that you started, the development and launching your, second act. And fast forward, here we are,
Here
and
we
the
are.
resources and the platforms that we now have is critical in this current time. And I kind of chuckle, not because it's funny, it's just as I look back on my why as to why I started my podcast was because I wanted to give a voice to us, to the Black women in corporate America, talk about the challenges and the things that we are dealing with. Even then, we were 67% of us had not gone back to work once
Hmm.
the world started to reopen. And now, fast forward, we are now representing once again the largest unemployment data, here in the US. So we're the last ones to be brought back, literally. And then we're the highest impact in terms of being terminated or reorged or whatever you may call it. I call it my liberation because it
Hmm.
truly was. And we can talk about that a little bit, but we're in the right place at the right time.
I believe that.
And
Hmm.
that is my personal opinion. And as I start thinking about how do we have our own seat at the table, not only our own seat, but how do we build our own table and bring others with us? Right. And then I look at your organization and you are doing just that very thing. And so now, how do we start to scale it? What does that look like for others? And so,
Hmm.
congratulations, and just very timely.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's funny that you say congratulations because when I was telling the few people that, I trusted with the information that I was no longer in corporate, I would say that 10 out of 10 people that I told, that was the first thing that they said was congratulations, which was unexpected, but also very comforting in that moment. So
Yes, yes.
it
And
continues to track.
but the beauty of it is, so you said that you started and you had your vision 5 years ago, or probably even longer than that, but you started to activate your vision 5 years ago, and you
Hmm.
still held on to, you still continue to work in corporate America. Tell me, in terms of the pivot, right? The shift. I know from coming from corporate, but now you really get to focus on your passion, which now
Hmm.
is leading to new heights. Tell me about that, this journey that you've been on to date, like in this, since you've had to make this pivot.
Yeah, so it started a while ago, and honestly, I had no idea that I would end up here 5 years later. I mean, that
Mhm,
wasn't why I started what I was doing. I actually got to a point in my career where I felt like a little bit confused, a little bit like, where do I go now?
mhm,
Because I felt like I had hit that ceiling and I wasn't ready to hit it yet.
mhm,
And so I was
mhm,
like, what do I do right now? And so I became very restless. And part of that restlessness was me wanting to do more, knowing that I could do more, but I just didn't have the framework in order
mhm,
to put it all together. So what I did was I ended up going back to school to get my master's degree because I
mhm,
felt like at that time, with me having a degree, a higher degree, that meant that that gave me a few more rungs to climb on the ladder because you can't deny that in corporate America. So that's exactly what happened. I went back, and from that point, that was during the pandemic because I actually got my degree in 2020 at the nearing the end of when we were coming out of COVID. And so after that, I was promoted a couple of more times. And I was promoted to the point of having a global team. And so at that point, I was like, oh, yeah, this really worked. This is what I was wanting because I felt like, again, I had more to offer. And so that gave me the tools and the resources and the language to get what I wanted. Um, at the same time, I didn't realize it at that point, but I was building what eventually became the Second Act Summit because my capstone is the Second Act Summit. How women in this generation, in the Gen X generation, we grew up without technology and we have really been the bridge to a world where all we have is technology. And
mhm,
so we tend to not give ourselves enough credit for being able to navigate that because that's one end of the spectrum to the other. And we as a collective have been able to navigate that quite beautifully, and we just don't give ourselves enough credit for that. And so I really built the Second Act Summit in homage to those women and letting that, you are a bridge, you have the skills, you can do new things, you can do more things, even in the midst of, your corporate career, whatever you may be doing, there is more for you. And know that that's what became the Second Act Summit.
I love it. I love the fact that there is more for us, right? That
Mm-hmm.
we are not defined just by the work that we do. We don't, we're more than our titles. Hence the podcast name, We're More Than Lipstick. And that's truly
Hello.
how, mine came about, was the fact that I have so much more to you so eloquently stated it, that we are so much more than what we see on a day-to-day basis on a 9 to 5. We
Mm-hmm.
are, which takes me to my next question. We are resilient women. We are resourceful. We are creative. And so when I say the word liberated, quite honestly, it is now is giving us an opportunity to do the things that we've always wanted to do without the not within the confines of a corporate structure, right?
Right.
So you've gone back to university, you've gotten your degree, so now you've upskilled your knowledge and your capabilities. You've now applied that in the workplace, right, to be able to expand to that global organization, to that global responsibility. And now here you are,
Mm-hmm.
culminating all of that in this time of transition. And I'm just going to say it. I'm going to keep it authentic. And I feel like the attack on Black women. I really
Mm-hmm.
do, because as
Mm-hmm.
you're checking all the boxes. We are the most educated within any
Mm-hmm.
demographic. Check, right? We have excelled in our career. Check.
Check,
We have checked all the boxes, but oh wait,
check, check, check.
but wait, there's more, right? So we've had to learn to be resilient, with us being, going back to your conversation, your comment around the Gen X, right? We were born of boomers who gave us all the push, all the tools, all the support that we needed to be successful, to even navigate. But we were the first. We were the
Mm-hmm.
first in terms of living without technology, but now in technology. We're the first to climb the ladder as high as we've been able to accomplish these things, and judges and vice presidents and founders of CEOs of organizations and podcasts and consultancy. So, okay, so now, but we've had to push through that. So we have had to really be resilient
Mm-hmm.
throughout our lives. So when you hear the word resilience in a moment like this, what does that mean to you personally?
For me, when I hear the word resilience, I always think of bouncing ball, right? That's the image that comes into my mind for whatever reason. And for me, it's not necessarily about bouncing backwards, it's about bouncing forwards for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, personally speaking, I've had to learn how to take all of these challenges that have come at me in the midst of this midlife journey and really sort of reinvent myself. I've had a major career shift. I have a 24-year-old daughter who needs constant caregiving. She has Down syndrome, so I'm a primary caregiver. And then for a small bit, I had to deal with, you mentioned it before, a change in identity because I've been this person for nearly
Mm-hmm.
20 years of my life, and now I'm no longer her in that form, I should say. But again,
Mm-hmm.
I had started doing this work 5 years ago. So I wasn't as tied to my title as a lot
Mm-hmm.
of women are because I had something else on the side that defined me. And
Mm-hmm.
so professionally, resilience has meant deciding not to wait on other people to give it to me because I did that for the majority of my career.
Career. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I was super silent about a lot of things that I saw because I felt like, oh, I've got to get there. I've got my parents' dreams on my back and I'm climbing the ladder. And so a lot of things that I saw, I was silent. And so I was like, because I have to get there. And so I was doing it for other people and not necessarily me. And so I've spent the better part of the last 20 years of my life in corporate communications, doing great work, winning awards. But then I realized that um, resilience really meant betting on me and
Yes.
also the women that I serve now, because those are some of the same women that are in the same situation that I'm in right now. And again, that's why the Second Act Summit continues to grow. That's why I added more life in midlife, which is my school community, just to show those women that resilience doesn't always look like staying where you are, even though there's nothing wrong with that. But
Hmm.
I also want them to know that sometimes resilience looks like building something brand new that makes room for who you are right now.
I love that. I love that so much. And, what really resonates with me is doing the work in corporate America, expecting to get recognized and promoted, or what is promised to you or stated, if you're able to accomplish X, then you'll be able to get to Y. And the
Hmm.
Y never happens. However, you've taken care of and you've done well with said project or with said goals or whatever that may be, but then that reward never comes for some. In your case, you were able to leverage and elevate through, where some of us, people like myself, you know did to a degree, but I hit that proverbial glass ceiling
Hmm.
and it never came to fruition. And quite honestly, in all transparency, I think that I don't think, I know that I had a plan of, I just need 5 more years, right? I want to do
Hmm.
5 more years. I'll have, I've got this strategy in place. I'll hit this said number that will activate all these other things. And then I'll be able to pivot into the things that I really want to do.
Yeah.
And however, somewhere in between all of that, sometime in 2024, I recognized, I was like, this is not it for me. Like, for a number of reasons. I
Hmm.
too have, I'm a single mom raising a son, and he is neurospicy. And there's a lot of hands-ons that I have to do, right, in order to make sure that he, his advocate, he's a brilliant little boy, and
Hmm.
I want him to have all of the resources that he has. But guess what? Mama has to show up to make sure that he's getting those resources. So my time was being pulled in so many different directions, and not necessarily, and was not accomplishing or given those elevated opportunities within the organization. And so I
Hmm.
had to pause, because I was being resilient, and I would hear people say, "Oh, Nicole, you're so resilient. Oh yeah, I love the fact that you're resilient." And to be honest, I started to have a love-hate relationship with the word resilient,
Yep. Yep.
because that for me indicated that you've gone through some things. Now, granted, you've come out on the other end, but you've had to go through it, to push through it, to come out on the other end. And when you
Hmm.
start hearing that word repeated over and over, I'm like, well, am I always going through something?
Correct.
Because
Correct.
because my body is saying I'm a little tired. My mind is
Hmm.
saying I'm a little tired, but I'm feeling like I've got to do this because I've known this for 25 years. I know I'm going to get a
Hmm.
check on Thursday. I know the insurance is covered. I know that the little human's going to be supported, and, take advantage of all the benefits and all the features and all the things that are available. But what's happening to mom, and what's happening to Nicole?
Right.
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 And it then
It,
became like, it was a moment, and when it was a pivotal moment. So when they came
hmm.
to, and I started doing the work, then I was like, let me see what my next move is going to be. How do I reactivate More Than Lipstick? But is More Than Lipstick going to pay the bills? Right. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Because not everybody has a microphone, and everybody thinks that they're a podcaster. So, how do you
Hmm.
navigate within that space? And no disrespect to my fellow podcasters, but everybody's in the space right now.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it was, but I did the work. So when the call came, the day that the call came and said, you know, we're making some changes within the organization, I was actually okay. I was
Yeah, me
really
too.
because I
Yeah.
had prepared myself and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, oh, this works out brilliantly. I get to retire. You guys
Mm-hmm.
are, you're reorging. So that comes with some other benefits to it. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
pivotal moment for me. And now I say again, it was my liberation moment. And so the
Yeah.
resiliency paid off. And now to your point, I get to bet on Nicole,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because now we get to do the thing that we've always wanted to do in our own
Yeah.
way with all the tools and the resources that we have garnered throughout our
Yeah.
20 plus years of service
Yeah.
for someone else.
Yeah, I have a episode on my YouTube page, and it took me a while to get there because I'm generally not a person who's very flashy, and I don't really talk about a lot of what I do in the workplace because I'm old school. I'm of the mindset that my work will speak for itself.
Mm,
But I'm learning that that needs to change a little bit. So one of the things that I did was really talk about my situation on YouTube. And I put a really bold uh, thumbnail out there that said, let go at 55. And it is probably my best performing video on my channel. I mean, my channel is very small. Again, I've been kind of working it a little bit, but
mhm,
it's that video really performed and it really told me a lot about what resonates with people, what kind of information people wanted. I am uh, very much an advocate of not putting all of your eggs in one basket. And I knew
mhm.
that when I shared my story about leaving corporate or however you want to phrase it, or being asked to leave corporate, that
Well, you were
I
invited
wanted
to find your happiness
you
elsewhere,
you
girl.
were invited to leave. You were invited to go through that door. So I mean, I can sit here and smile and giggle about it, but like you, I knew in that moment that when it happened, I mean, I almost I joke with my family all the time and I say I'm somewhat psychic and I knew it was coming. And so it's very hard to surprise me. And so when I walked in and you see HR there, you're like, oh, okay, it happens today. And so I went back home and I was telling my daughter, I call my daughter and I say, before I say what I'm about to say, I want you to know that I am okay. And I told her the news. And after the fact, she called my husband and she was like, is she all right? Because she doesn't normally respond in this way. She's so calm. She's so zen. And I'm like, I am really okay. I am okay. I know that this was the right move for me.
Mhm,
And when I look back at it, not to get all, "Oh," but it happened in the seventh month on the seventh day. I had been there for 16 years. Six plus one is seven. And so, for those that don't know, seven is the number of
the
completion.
completion. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
It's
ma'am.
completion. And
Yes,
God was
it
telling me,
is.
you finished, girl.
It's finished, girl. It's time to go.
It's finished. Move on. And
Yes,
so it
yes.
took me a minute to really get it. And
Right.
then all of those sevens just started popping out at me. And I said, okay, God, I hear you. I hear you.
I
And I
love
knew
that.
in that moment that I was going to be okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's going to be all right, right? It's going to
It's
be
going to be
okay.
all
All right.
right.
Totally. I mean, I completely, it's so funny that you say, or so interesting that you say that you knew it was coming. And, with me being one of the senior people on the team, people were calling, well, what do you think? Oh, I'm going to get fired. I'm like, no, I was like, this is how it works. Like, I've been here 25 years. I have survived a number of
Yeah.
reorgs. And let me tell you, this is how it works, right? I said, they're never going to, like, they'll fire you, you'll get the call on a Friday. Like I had all of these things that would happen. And sure
Hmm.
enough, it's very similar. I'm on a Teams call with a colleague, and we're chatting, and it's Friday morning at 10
Mm.
o'clock or whatever it may be. And an invitation popped up on my calendar, and it was from my VP. And I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. And so I
Mhm.
click on it, and then there's a second name that I did not know. And I was like, girl, I said, then there's a name on here I don't recognize. She's like, what's the name? She goes to roster. She's like, that's
She's
HR. I
like
said, girl,
HR.
I said, girl, the VP, I said, girl, I'm getting fired today. She's like, what? I was like, I was like, I'm getting fired today. I was like, so why don't we hold this call until after I have this call in about 15 minutes, because this topic may be a moot point. So
Exactly.
it may be a
Exactly.
moot point. And by the time I finished that statement, she was like, huh, I just got one on my calendar too. I was like, girl, yes. I was like, yep. I was like, today is today. So sure enough, got
Wow.
on the call, had the conversation, and I was a little teary-eyed, and not so much about the fact that I was being let go. It was just very interesting in the conversation. At the
Hmm.
time, the said VP was like, and you're a great mom, and we know. And I was just in tears, because I was like, number one, you really don't know my son, and number two, you're letting me go. So like,
Right.
so I'm not
Right.
sure, how that's validating at this moment. So that was the tears that fell, not because I was
Hmm.
saddened about the information, but
Hmm.
just the effort of trying to connect with me, saying, "Oh, and now you have more time with your
In
son."
this moment. Right.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you know I'm a single parent? Do you know that, like, you don't really
Right.
know me because you have just now put the world on my shoulders, but I'm
Correct.
good because
Yeah.
I'm about to activate over here, right? Because
Hmm.
I know the business. And sure enough, I reconnected back, and she was like, I've been given my notice as well. So, things happen. We have to be resilient, even though when we know things are coming our way,
Yeah.
it's still that, ugh, it is it's the moment, right? But our
Hmm.
cheese has been moved. And
Yep.
so now we
Hmm.
have to activate these things, and we have already demonstrated that we have the capability to do it. We've already launched our own projects, or our own companies, or our own purpose driven things that fulfill us as human beings, and truly
Hmm.
help us define who we truly are. Girl, we can rock locks
Absolutely.
with not any problems, right? We don't have to, like,
Absolutely. Without having to worry about someone touching them, which has happened to me a number of times. And it's kind of like, let me explain to you what this means. And there's
right.
this, I'm taken aback energy. And I noticed that, you talked about this earlier, but, there's a lot of assumptions made
Hmm.
about us as Black women in this corporate environment, particularly if you are at a certain level. And there's precious little space for us to be us.
Yes.
We have to manage our emotions to the point of, um, you know, bringing on our own anxiety and it impacting our health because of all of the things that we have to deal with as Black women in this space.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the biggest thing that I have learned is that, you know, something that we should have known from the beginning, but our parents, they didn't have that context, at least mine didn't, so they couldn't tell me that. But you cannot build your future on someone else's foundation.
Oh, girl.
And
Yes.
that is like the principal thing that I have learned from this whole experience is that at the end of the day, if I leave, and today it happened to me, tomorrow it's going to happen to you.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's
Yes.
just the nature of the corporate beast. And if you don't think that it's going to happen, then God bless you. But that's what happens. And so, you've got to be, especially for Black women, I think,
Yes.
going back to your word resilience, for us, it means ownership. You have to own your thing. You have to own your skills. You have to hone your skills as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned.
I love that because you just answered my next question. When we talk about building your own table, it sounds very powerful. And it is, right? We stand on these stages, we walk in these spaces, and we're like, we are the decision makers, we are the creators, we're all these things, right? But it can also be a little bit intimidating. But what are some of the first steps that you recommend for women who feel like the table is no longer serving them? I mean, like if you had one thing, I know we've talked about many, but if there's
Mhm.
one thing that you could share from just this whole experience from 5 years ago to recent pivotal moment in your life, what would you share?
I would say it is to name your value. And by that, I mean that so many of us, particularly Black women, tend to downplay what we have done and the skills that we have. You know, we have led teams, we've raised families, some of us without a partner. We have solved crises, we have managed budgets, we have built communities. And all of these things, they are very real skills. They are assets
Yes.
that people paid us for in the corporate
Yes.
environment. And just because we're no longer in the corporate environment does not mean that those things have less value. So the
Mhm.
next step for you to ask after you name your value is, what part of that do I actually want to be known for? You
Yes.
know? And once you name it, then you can start to package it. And then that package can become a service, it can become a podcast, it can become an event, it can become a digital product. We have so many choices when you start to think of it in that context. And
Yes.
so that's why I started talking to women about naming their values so that they could see, you have options. And that
Yes.
is what this is all about. We have options because of the 20 plus years of experience and skill set that we have. We have given ourselves the option, we have given ourselves the table. And so now it's up to us to go sit at it.
I love that. And I want to take a moment to make sure that we are clear when we talk about name your value. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
say from a monetary perspective,
No, no.
right? Because we think in terms of titles, as we grow within titles, then our salaries grow. And then, we can travel the world and be these fabulous Instagram posts where I am, I'm doing all the things. We're really talking about, which is great. And I don't knock that at all. But that
Mm-hmm.
is not everyone's reality or capabilities, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
desire, at
Correct.
certain points in time in our lives. But when we talk about value, we're talking about what are our values, what defines me, when someone sees me, what do they think? Right? Like, oh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
she is a collaborator. She is creative. She is, she's just that type of person. So, what are those things that you want to be, like you said, known for,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily a value that's attached to a monetary
Correct.
amount? And I think
Correct.
that's very important. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
am I correct
Yeah,
in
that
terms of how you
you
think
are
about that?
you are spot on. I mean, I think of it as an identity shift.
Yes.
And we have been in these roles for so long, and a lot of people associate their worth with a job title. And when that
Yes.
job title leaves or is taken away, then they feel worthless or that they can no longer contribute. So, my big thing is know your own value, name your own value. This is freedom.
Yes.
Being in this space, you have the freedom to define yourself for yourself.
Yes. On
Got a
your
little Audre
own.
Lorde. Yeah, got a little Audre Lorde on y'all. But, this is your opportunity to really, define you and not have other people's perception of who you are,
Yes.
particularly as a Black woman, because I think that our corporate experience is a lot different from
Oh,
our colleagues.
oh, for sure. 100%. And we all have stories, right? We have so many stories.
Hmm.
And I was just talking to my mom about, a thing that happened to me over a decade and a half ago. And it was in that moment where I was like, this still kind of triggers me a little bit, and I
Mm,
didn't
hmm.
realize that even though that was 10 years ago, I've been removed from the corporate environment for, a period of time now, that I should be okay to move on. But there have been very positive experiences that I had in corporate America. But then there are some things that I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know how I dealt with that. And
Right,
the resiliency and the muscles that I had to utilize to just kind of push through. I'm like, did she just lock me up in a room after a meeting and close the door and stand in front of the door and want to give me some feedback and won't let me out of this room? Like
right.
it was,
Hmm.
literally, like this is a real example. I'm like, and I can't push her out of the way because then I'm going to be the angry black woman. Like the
Correct.
mental gymnastics that we have to go through. And like, but I'm the one that's feeling threatened in this moment because I'm locked up in a room and this woman is giving me feedback. And I was just like,
That word
girl,
is just
the
the
feedback
word
word is the
feedback.
word. And I said,
Yes.
and I was traumatized. I literally was like traumatized by that. And when I shared it, with my then at the time leader, they thought, oh, well, that's just how she is. That's just how she is,
No, we need to
girl.
understand that how I am because, like I said, there's so little understanding or air to just give us that same consideration.
Yes.
And it is,
Yes.
I never use the word fair, but, in this situation, it is unfair. It is just so unbalanced. I've had those conversations too, where, I lost count literally of how many people I reported to over the years in my last role. But I remember this one person in particular. We were all in a meeting, and at the time, there were two Black women on the team. And, you know, my supervisor kind of pulled me aside and she said, I noticed that you were kind of, you know, angry in the meeting. And, I just want to know what that's about. And keep in mind that she had just become my supervisor. I don't even know you. And so I said, interesting. I said, what does my upset look like? And so she could not answer the question. And I was like, no, because you're telling me something that's not measurable in my view. So if you're going to give me feedback, I want it to be measurable feedback because I want to be able to take that feedback and then I want to be able to get better because you say at this moment that I am performing under where your expectation is of me. And so, she was like caught off guard by that. And then I said, oh, and by the way, I wasn't the person that said it. It was my colleague who was sitting next to me,
So we all
girl
we
who
just
was
all
sitting
look
next to me.
alike.
I said, I didn't say it. Right, right. So she just messed up all the way. And I just thought that that was really crazy because we're not seen in the corporate
No,
environment. And that really solidified it for me in that moment that I'm not seen. I'm interchangeable with my colleague. We look nothing alike, but I was completely interchangeable with her. So much so that I got pulled aside and reprimanded for something that I didn't even do. And
right.
that is where, we have to be resilient. We have to pull from all of these places to maintain some level of, professionalism, calm, and all the things that our counterparts who are not Black or African American don't have to contend with on a daily basis.
At all. At all. And so I have one more question, but I wanted to kind of go back when we talk about the value and what we bring. And I love when you said, what is that product that we can turn into? Because I don't want to lose that one because, girl, we could talk all day, right? So many things that
Yeah.
we could chat about. But we talked about, how do we turn those things into a product? And one of the things that I want people to understand in terms of entrepreneurship and business owners and even the revenue gap that comes with when we're wanting to do our own thing. Black American women, Black and African American women, we make up about 14% of women-owned businesses in the US. 14%. And there are about 5% of those employee-owned businesses that generate 3.6% of the revenue for the overall GDP for the United States. And that's based on Wells Fargo business, right? So
Hmm.
we are contributing, we are building, we are providing services, we are doing the work. Now, the
Hmm.
opportunity comes in is that many of us that are, in fact, entrepreneurs, business owners, that we are solo entrepreneurs. So we don't necessarily have large staff or a staff
Hmm.
at all, right? It's me and my assistant. That is my team. Now I have partners that I partner with, but I do not necessarily have people that are on a payroll.
Sure.
So
Hmm.
as we think about that growth, as we think about those opportunities, those are the things that I would love when we start thinking about building our own table and bringing our own chairs and our linen and all the things, or even our paper plates, girl, if we have to. We're
Hmm.
going to bring what we need in order to eat, but how do we bring others along with us, right? Because there are 300 plus thousand and growing of us that have talents that are
Hmm.
out there that
Yeah.
need the work. And I think that
Hmm.
that's something that we want to think about collectively, even perhaps offline, on what that may look like for us.
Yeah, I mean, I could quickly answer that question if you like.
Hmm.
I think it's all about partnership. I tell people
Hmm.
all the time, particularly the women in my community, I'm like, why in the world do you think that Run DMC and Aerosmith did a song called Walk This Way together? A rock band and a rap band. There was no in between. I mean, I'm showing my age here, but I don't care. But nothing like that had ever been done before. And why did they do it? Because they each had a desire to get into the other space. And
Mm,
so because they were so divergent, yet doing the same thing. And this is why I say there's always room for everybody. They were
yes.
able to come together and do something and do a collaboration and create a partnership that was beneficial to both of them. And that is something that I think that we as women, particularly Black women, don't do enough of. So I've made a concerted effort to start talking to more Black women, to start talking to more women, period,
Period. Hmm.
about those collaborations, those partnerships. Like, hey, girl, what do you do? And here's what I do. How can we make a baby together? And so
Right.
that's how you get it done. That's how you get the exposure. Because I've talked to some people and I was really surprised by some of the feedback that I got from my Second Act Summit because my summit draws not just African American women, it draws, white women, it draws Indian women, it draws Hispanic women, just women over the age of 40 who are, like I said, are at this professional or personal crossroads. And I had someone ask me one time, they were like, wow, you've been able to build a community that includes everybody. That's impressive. And it got me thinking, like, I never went into this just because I'm Black doesn't mean that I only get to talk to Black people.
Right.
And I want us to stop thinking that way because that's how you learn from other people
Yes. Yes.
you know? And so that's something that I think that we need to get better at. We need to be more open to, especially if, that person is open to helping us learn. Because being frank about it, there's a lot that is known out there that is not shared with us.
That we don't
And
know.
so
Right.
that we don't
We're
know.
hence where the new terminology that I've been hearing out there in social media. I'm not one to gatekeep, right? Because it's a
Right.
nod to there are those who gatekeep, right? So
Yep.
it's a message. It's not like
Yep.
I'm open. It's like you're not, and this needs to be a practice. And
Right.
going back to your point in terms of partnerships and collaboration, the other thing is amongst our community that we typically don't do loans. We don't go to banks and get funding. We
Mm-hmm.
bootstrap a lot of our efforts, right? And so when you're looking at those collaborative moments, it's also an opportunity to fair share the funding of the ideas and the initiatives that you want. The other thing that I have been proud of, and I've been seeing a lot, that there are now more intentionality about funding that's available,
Mm-hmm.
and they're offering it from places like Canada. So we're not
Mm-hmm.
getting into the quagmire of the dreaded DEI. Oh, so you're
Right.
not being, oh Jesus, we're
Right.
gonna do a part two. We're gonna have to do a part
I
two of this. And so
know.
we're gonna
Oh
reschedule
my
because the
goodness.
things, I mean, and I know that we're preaching, like many of our audiences that are listening are familiar with this, but it has to be discussed, right? It has to be
Mm-hmm.
said out
Mm-hmm.
loud, and there
Yeah.
have to be faces that are
Mm-hmm.
associated with these things, because you're not the only person that I know that's been impacted just from the past 6 or 7 months. So we've
Yeah.
got to talk about these things. We have to be able to come together, like you said, and collaborate. We have got to believe in our own talents. We have to do these things because guess we've done it. We've been
Mm-hmm.
doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We've been
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
And
Nobody's
I think
coming to
that this
save us, Nicole.
girl,
Nobody's coming to
girl,
save us.
look,
And we have
I'm
got to
leaning
do it
into the camera.
right. Nobody's coming to save us. And,
Nobody's coming to
it's
save
so
us.
funny that you talk about that whole bit about um, loaning, because we are underfunded as a collective. And I want people to know that just because they won't give it to you, we can do it ourselves with the skills and the knowledge that we have. It may take longer,
Right.
but we can do it and it is doable. And again, on my YouTube channel, I just did a video about, it's called Seeding Your Own Success. And I go through like 5 things, and 5 ways that you can do that. So, I mean, it's possible. All things are
Yes.
possible. So,
Absolutely. All things are possible and they will be because, like you said, no one's coming to save us. We still have to eat our kids. We still have to take care of our
hmm
families. Like, you know, failure is not an option and
no.
it never has been. And therefore, that is why we are probably the poster children of the word resilience, because that
Yep.
we know how to do, that
hmm
we do well, right? So I am not afraid of the next chapter. Quite honestly, I do concern myself like, okay, well, the mortgage still has to be paid. Okay, the
hmm
kid's feet is still, his feet are still growing every 2 months. There's a reality. There's a reality of all of this. But in terms of what my success looks like, in terms of what my capabilities are, I too have had to be reminded several times since I have gone 100% entrepreneur that, Nicole, there are not very many people like you, right?
hmm
I have an episode on one of my on my podcast, an episode that says it's okay to believe your own press. We have
hmm
been taught to your point, like, oh, I'm not
Ooh,
going to toot my
girl.
own horn.
Yes.
Oh, I have to be
hmm
humble. No, I am going to be the biggest PR person out here on the planet talking about
hmm
oneself, because I when I talk about what I do and when I say it, what I've done and what I currently do, and I say it out loud, I'm like, dang, girl, okay, you've
You did
traveled
that.
to every, right,
Yes.
you did that,
hmm
like you have traveled the world, you have facilitated, keynote spoken on every continent with the exception of Antarctica. And if anybody's out there and they need some business down in Antarctica, I have a passport, I will travel. So so it is okay. But when you talk about the work that that we do and we say it out loud, a lot of people are kind of like, oh wow, well tell me more. Really? You've done that? And for me, I was just in it. I was trying to survive. I was on this
Yes.
project. I was trying to make sure I showed up in this city or that country, remembered what client I was supposed to be talking to and
Right.
what I was supposed
Right.
to be talking about. I wasn't thinking about really what I was learning and what I was bringing to their table that now I
hmm
get to bring to mine.
Yeah. And
And
that is one important point because that's what I tell people now who are still in it, who are still in the 9 to 5. Take as much as you can from that. I don't mean like take in
Right.
an unethical way, but
Sure.
I mean get into the policy. What
Yes.
is available to you? What is available to you? Take advantage of everything that is available to you. They said they were going to pay for my master's degree. All right. Even if I don't want a master's degree, I'm going to go get one because you're paying for it.
Hmm.
And, can I take a sabbatical? All right. I'm going to take a sabbatical because I've been here for 16 years and you're going to pay me at 100% when I go out. So I don't need a sabbatical right now, but I'm going to take it
Take one.
because you're
Yes.
paying for it. So get
That's
into
right.
the policy, know what's available to you, and take as much training as they will give you. I know it's a pain. Oh God, here comes another training. Take it.
Yes.
And don't think of it as, oh, I'm training for them. No, you're training for the next
For
chapter. You're
yourself.
training for you. And so that when I started thinking about it in those terms, it became so much more up until that point, like you, I was so busy and it was really becoming untenable for me. And
Yes.
when I started thinking of it in those terms, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm good. I'm good.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm going to double back on that. Take that sabbatical, girl. I'm going to need you to
Hmm.
take the sabbatical because
Yes.
sometimes you have to hit the pause button. And in order
Hmm.
to hit the pause button, in order to think and to think about what your next steps are, you have to be still for a moment
Yes.
to be able to think. You
Yes.
cannot think about when you're picking up the kids and when you're in the car and you're trying to figure out dinner and you're trying to get to this appointment and you've got that
Hmm.
client. Okay, I have the weekend. Well, sometimes weekends are just about recovery.
Right.
That's not a sabbatical. And
Right.
I too took a sabbatical, right? And that gave me the opportunity to be prepared for the phone call that was going to come less than 60 days after I
That part.
returned.
That
Okay.
part.
So when the phone call came, I was like, oh, okay, well, let me just go get these flippy note stick marks off of this wall that I've been working on
Hmm.
for the past several months. Just like and this was and my thing was not even like an immediate. It was like, if I could do this,
Hmm.
what would that look like? Right. And so it
Right.
was more aspirational. But what I
Hmm.
realized is that I was doing my business plan.
You were
And
planning. Hmm.
when you talk about, like that moment of pause, it wasn't my choice. It was my health that was taking a toll on me. And
Right.
I was just like, I am not going to be able to do another year. And I will share this with the audience. And this is this transparent moment. It was the first day of school for my son. And I was
Wow.
taking him to school. And I had a panic attack.
Mm.
And I had to hold it until he got into the building because I did not want my child to be traumatized on the first day of
Right.
school. His dad and I were taking him to school. And I said,
Hmm.
you take him. I'm going to go to the office and sit down before I pass out on these people's front lawn. And I came home later that day and I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do the school year if I'm
Hmm.
doing, and there were, I'm like, if I'm having, if this is the moment for me. And so sure enough, you talk about dates, 5 days later, or that was on a Monday, that Friday was when I got the phone call. And I said to myself, and I'm a believer. I said, well, Lord, I guess you said, no, we're not going to do this all year. We're
Yeah.
not going to have you stressed out. So how about if I just take care of this for you? And so
Hmm.
then you can go do that thing that you were working on when you asked me to find you some time and some space, and I was able to get you on that sabbatical. So now I'm gonna
Hmm.
need you to activate this.
Hmm.
So I am saying to you, to our audience, to your point, no one is coming to save us. But as these moments happen and you feel like they are a setback or they're meant to derail you, sometimes they're meant to slow you down so you can think, sis, so you
Yes.
can breathe, so you can figure
Hmm.
out what the next move is, opposed to being led, that you become the leader. And
Yes.
for me, that is the resilience of it all. And a year plus later, here I am. I cannot wait to come back and see where you, girl, because now you have all the time in the world to work on your passion and make it that
Yes.
thing. And I
Yes.
am just excited for the both of us and for those of
Me
us who are
too.
in the second act of our life. Oh, you see how I weave that in?
Like, like my daughter does.
But this is the new thing. I'm like, it's no longer the snap. We're gonna do this now. But I truly appreciate you taking the time and,
For the
coming on this.
invitation.
Yes, and I hope that the audience, gains some insights from what we have talked about. There's so much more to unpack on this, and I would love to have you come back again and let's continue
Absolutely.
the conversation. But I think, the things that I've taken away from what you shared is, identify again what your value is. Look at those opportunities to collaborate with others because no one is coming to save us. And we have more skills than any other demographic out here. So we can find someone to help us and help each other get to whatever that next level is that we want to. And
Hmm.
resilience, even though sometimes for me, it gives me a little heartburn, a little heart palpitation, I am happy that I have that muscle to be able to activate and do what I need to do. And that it is a beautiful thing to have resilience because in this current time, I'd rather have the capabilities than not because nobody
Amen.
has time to be in no fetal position and trying to figure it all out. We got to go.
Amen. We gotta go. Gotta go.
Got to go.
Yeah.
All right, my
Hmm.
darling. Well, listen, thank you so much. Any parting words for the audience before we go? Give me a little wisdom
Uh,
there, girl. I'm putting you on the spot. Talk to me.
I remember you had asked me before, like if there was anything that, I did on a daily basis that was
Yes.
truly intentional. The one thing I will say is that, lean on your community. We all have one, whether you think you do or not. But these are the people, these are the trusted people, these are the trusted spaces that you can get yourself into to share.
Yes.
We all struggle, there's no need to be superwoman at this point.
Nope.
But as you start to create, as you start to, think about what you're going to do in the next chapter, community is so important for helping you understand like what people want. Because at the end
Yes.
of the day, you're serving your community. I'm serving my community. And so, in order to do that at a level that we're used to, we need that feedback. We need that support. We need that grounding. And so, that's why, surrounding yourself with people who are truly your advocates, who truly have your best interest at heart, is so very important.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate those final words. And again, I appreciate you. And I will look forward to our next time to get together. Thank you for joining More Than Lipstick, the podcast.
Thank you.
Bye.